An Iranian journalist who's been held in detention in the US for more than a week is set to be released. Marzieh was detained by authorities on a material witness arrest warrant, but she is expected to be free to go once she has given testimony in a criminal case later today. However, her plight has sparked a lot of controversy. Hashemi was arrested on January the 13th while she was visiting family in the state of Missouri. According to US officials, she is being held as a material witness in an unspecified criminal case. She hasn't been charged with any crime, and the court says that she will be released after giving testimony, something that is normal practice under US law. We can go now to a friend and former colleague of the journalist, Narges Mobilegi. He joins us, I think, from the UK, and thank you very much for your time this evening. Just run through what have been your greatest concerns then about your friend's case.
Yeah, so I'm a former colleague of Marzieh's, also a journalist here in the UK. There's been many concerns about Marzieh's case that highlight, I think, broader issue in the United States. Just to start with what is happening on Wednesday, the grand jury session for Marzieh and her 3 children who have been subpoenaed is taking place in the AM in Washington, D.C. Wednesday. As you said, we are hoping that she should be released because she will have finished her testimony, and we hope that is going to be the case. Of course, the family have called for immediate release. Activists and journalistic bodies across the world have called for her release because Marzieh is being detained under a controversial law. Yes, it is a law, but the material witness law has been deemed unconstitutional by a New York appeals court, where the court has said it's been misused. The ACLU and Human Rights Watch have talked about how since 9/11 this law has basically been used to detain Muslims indefinitely without trial, in essence on a fishing expedition. And I think that whilst we hope, there is no indication that Marzieh is going to be released today, but we hope she will because the courts have said, the authorities, the government has said that once she's finished being a witness, she should be released. We hope that happens today, this Wednesday. But the broader issue still remains. Why was she arrested and detained without charge to begin with? Why were her civil and religious rights violated, her hijab stripped off her head, a mugshot taken without her hijab on? That's happened to other women in the United States. In the New York City, 3 Muslim women settled with the New York City state over the exact same issue. She was refused halal and vegetarian food, effectively denying her food in the initial days of her detention. And this material witness law, which is what has angered people, apart from her detention, the issue broadly, that this draconian law as well, which is what the family have been highlighting. There is a protest taking place outside the court, and there's already been a call for protests on Friday. As my last count, it was about 25 cities and 9 countries that said they're going to protest on Friday. You know, as I said, we hope that she will be released today. If she's not, well, I think in the coming hours we're going to be seeing a rapidly developing story as to how this angle is going to be taken.
Narges, have you been able to speak to her recently, and what sort of state of mind is she in?
No one has been able to speak to her apart from 2 telephone conversations with her family. She does have legal counsel, but we don't know what this case that she's a material witness for is about. We don't know why the children have been subpoenaed. There's been 2 phone calls with the children. In the first, the children were very worried because, as I said, she explained those civil and religious rights violations. In the second call, she said that those had now been redressed. And Marzieh's oldest son believes that is because of the media coverage and because of this outpouring of activism around the world in support of Marzieh and against her arrest. And what the children have said is that they wanted to highlight, well, there's many Muslims and people of colour, African Americans in prison in America where this is happening to, and they don't get that same privilege of the media coverage or the strong legal counsel. So I haven't been able to speak to her, it's been a shutdown around her case, and that is a part of the controversy over these material witness laws, that there's no access, no information.
And the fact that there is a lack of information has led to speculation, hasn't it? I mean, we can only describe it as speculation because we just don't know. But her son has said she was filming a documentary about the Black Lives Matter movement. Some believe that might have something to do with it. The fact that she's from Iran and there's poor relations between Iran and the US, people believe perhaps that has something to do with it. As you say, the fact we know very little means that people jump to their own conclusions too.
Well, I would say that actually it's an editorial spin that there's been a focus on the fact that she's from Iran or that she's Iranian. Marzieh is American-born. She's an American citizen. She's African-American. Her two of her 3 children live in America. Her grandchildren are in America. Her family is in America. She graduated from journalism in a university from America. She happens to have chosen to live in Iran and work for a news station that happens to be in Iran. Journalism is not a crime. And actually, I will make a point to editorial rather than speaking on the court case, which I can't do at the moment. But I think there is something to the editorial spin of a story such as this, because it could be, the headlines could be completely different and the story could be completely different and the international focus of it could be completely different given the facts on the ground. Those are the facts. Marzieh is an African-American Muslim. She was travelling back home. She was not entering the United States. She was not leaving the United States. She was home to see her family and to do some journalistic work, both of which are her right. She was taking an internal flight between doing some filming and seeing some family, and she's been arrested under an American law. It's got really, in essence, really nothing to do with Iran on a political level, those facts, that they're being embellished or editorialised, or if at all her detention has to do with that fact, that is a very separate issue to the fact that she's an American citizen. She has a right to travel in her country on an internal flight without this happening to her. And she's almost 60 years old, might I add, and has some health conditions. And so this would have been a very difficult time for her. OK, look, now I guess we're running out of time, but of course the hope is, the expectation is that she'll be free to go later today. Do you think this case will influence, I don't know what it could influence, do you think it will influence the way the law is implemented in the future in the US? I think certainly what's happened is that many people around the world, because Marzieh is an internationally well-known journalist with decades of experience. I mean, there are protests happening in Nigeria, in Pakistan, in Denmark, in the United Kingdom, right across the United States, on different continents around the world. So I think one thing it has done is brought the issue up on the world stage, because I think probably many people didn't even know there was such a law called as the material witness law, or that such a draconian law and legal loophole existed in the United States. So at the very least, she's brought an awareness to the issue. I hope she's released today, because that is what should happen. She should not have been detained to begin with. I hope she is released today, and that I hope we can hear from Marzieh to talk about these issues very soon. Sure, and we'd be great to get her onto RT2 if that is possible. Narges, look, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you explaining the ins and outs of this case as much as we know. That was Narges Mobalegi, from the UK. Thank you. OK, well, let's go to some live pictures, I think, now from outside the court, from where that case is taking place. They are protesting against Hashemi's arrest. They believe that she shouldn't have been held at all. However, as we've mentioned, under US law, it is common practice to detain material witnesses until they are giving testimony in criminal cases. But the expectation is that Marzieh Hashemi will be released later today after she's given evidence in a criminal case, a case that we do know very little about. Now let's go to Caleb Moppin to talk about some global reaction. Caleb, we were talking to one of Marzieh's friends there, a former colleague too. She says there's been an awful lot of reaction around the world too. Just fill us in on the sort of things that people have been saying.
Well, we have heard a widespread outrage about the ongoing detention of Marzieh Hashemi. Now, we have heard officially from the Foreign Ministry of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran's Foreign Minister, Javad Zarif, has actually spoken up in support of the journalist who works for an Iranian media outlet, Press TV. This is what Javad Zarif has said.
She is a famous journalist. She's done nothing but journalism, and the arrest of Mrs. Hashemi is a very clear affront to freedom of expression, a political abuse of an innocent individual, and I believe the United States should release her immediately without further delay.
Now, the outrage has spread far beyond simply Iran. There has been outrage across the planet and from many international journalistic organizations. The Committee to Protect Journalists has spoken up on behalf of Marzieh Hashemi. We've also heard from the International Federation of Journalists. There have been various international free press organizations that have voiced extreme concern about the case in which someone, a journalist, has been arrested and is being held without any charges and without the reason for their being detained other than this material witness law being publicly stated and being very clear. Now, in addition to the outrage from official journalistic organizations from around the globe, there's also been widespread protests among citizens and the public in Nigeria, in Pakistan, in Kashmir. We've seen people taking to the streets to protest against the detention of Marzieh Hashemi. And right now, out in front of the courthouse, there are protests taking place in Washington, D.C. And from what we understand, there is a nationwide day of action planned in the United States in several days, in which there are protests planned in Washington, D.C., New York City, and elsewhere. And many different voices are speaking up about what they see as really a threat to those who practice journalism in the United States and a threat to Muslim Americans. There's all kinds of speculation about the reason for her detention, as the U.S. government has really not been clear on it, other than saying that she's there to give testimony before a grand jury. So people are waiting to see what happens today, whether or not she will be released after today's proceedings. But it has certainly created a firestorm across the planet.